My name is Sophie Taylor. I am 32 years old, and on the day my life split in two, I stood at the doorway of a church in a dress my mother would have called cheap. My father, a powerful senator, had already made his choice. His seat in government mattered more than his seat at my wedding. He did not even bother to send flowers. My mother left me a final voicemail instead. "Your impulsive decision will ruin us," she hissed, as if loving a mechanic instead of a polished politician was a crime against our bloodline. She called my wedding an embarrassment, like I was staging a scandal instead of a ceremony. I stared at my phone, listening to her words echo in my head while guests filed in behind me, laughing, oblivious. They thought today was about love. They had no idea it was also about payback. Because while my parents were busy protecting their image, I had discovered exactly what that image was built on. Let us just say there were things buried in our perfect family that would be far more terrifying for them than a daughter who refuses to marry for status. I slipped a small envelope deeper into my clutch, feeling the thin shape of a USB drive press against my palm. I had not decided yet whether I would really use it. I told myself this was just insurance, just a reminder that they did not own me anymore. But a darker part of me wanted them to see everything, to feel the same sick panic they had spent years forcing on me. And when they finally saw what I handed them, they would. If you want to see how that envelope shattered my perfect family, stay till the end and hit subscribe. When the doors of the church finally swung open, I forced my shoulders back and stepped inside. The music rose around me, soft and hopeful, like the kind of life my parents had never imagined for me. At the end of the aisle stood Jake Carter, the man they thought was beneath us, the man who had spent more nights under a car hood than at a fundraiser. He was not in a tailored suit from some designer my mother favored, but he looked more solid, more real, than any of the polished men she had tried to push at me. For a second, I almost turned and looked at the empty front pew where my father should have been. The space felt louder than the music, louder than the whispers I knew were already starting. A senator skipping his daughter's wedding is the kind of thing that makes people talk. But I kept my eyes on Jake. His hazel gaze met mine, steady and sure, as if he were silently reminding me I was not alone, not anymore. As I walked down the aisle, my clutch brushed against my hip with every step, the envelope inside like a heartbeat I could feel in my palm. That drive held months of late-night digging, accidental discoveries, and one anonymous email that had changed everything. The family foundation my parents bragged about at every gala was not just inefficient, it was dirty. Money that was supposed to go to scholarships and shelters had been quietly redirected into shell accounts tied back to my father and his closest donors. My mother knew. She always knew. She just called it strategy. I had not planned for my wedding to become a battlefield. At first, the drive was only a line in the sand, my way of saying, "You cannot control me forever." But the more they pushed, the more my anger hardened into something sharper. The officiant cleared his throat, pulling me back into the moment. Jake took my hands in his thumbs brushing soothing circles over my skin. "You look beautiful," he whispered, and for a heartbeat I let myself just be a bride, not a senator's disappointment or a walking scandal. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, and the church settled into a quiet hum. I breathed in, breathed out, and started to believe I could have this, that love might be enough to drown out politics and expectations. Then the back doors slammed. The sound cracked through the ceremony like a gunshot. Every head turned. My stomach dropped. My mother, Martha Taylor, stood framed in the doorway, dressed in a glittering gown better suited for a state dinner than my embarrassment of a wedding. Her eyes swept the room, cold and sharp, landing on me like a laser. For a second, The two versions of my life collided, the obedient daughter she had raised and the woman standing here holding a mechanic's hands. She walked down the aisle without an invitation, heels striking the floor in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Whispered murmurs chased her. I felt Jake's grip tighten, a question in his touch. Do you want to stop this? Do you want to run? Martha did not speak until she was close enough that I could see the disdain curled at the corner of her mouth. This is an embarrassment, she said clearly, loud enough for the entire church to hear. You are throwing away everything we built for you. Heat rushed into my cheeks, but I did not let go of Jake. We are in the middle of my wedding, I said, my voice low but steady. If you do not approve, you are free to leave. For a heartbeat, something like shock flashed in her eyes. I had never spoken to her like that, not in public, not ever. She leaned in slightly. You think marrying a mechanic instead of a future senator is some grand act of independence? Your impulsive decision will ruin us, she whispered, echoing the voicemail, every word dipped in venom. I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. If we are ruined, Mom, it will not be because I chose love over status. My fingers tightened around Jake's. It will be because of the things you and Dad were so terrified I would find. Her gaze flicked briefly to my clutch, and for the first time since she arrived, I saw it. A crack in her perfect composure. Fear. Shall we continue? I asked the officiant calmly, without looking away from her. He hesitated, then nodded and picked up where he left off. The vows resumed, but the mood in the room had shifted. It was no longer just a ceremony. It was a standoff. While I spoke my promises to Jake, I could feel my mother's stare burning into the side of my face. Every word I spoke felt like a step further away from the life she had scripted for me. Every breath reminded me of the drive in my bag and the choice I would eventually have to make. And as the church held its breath between past and future, I could not help but wonder, if you were standing where I was, would you choose peace? Or would you finally let the truth burn everything down? We were pronounced husband and wife to a wave of applause that sounded almost surreal, like it was happening to someone else. Jake kissed me, the crowd cheered, and for a few blissful seconds, I managed to forget that my mother was standing at the back of the church like a storm cloud. When we walked back down the aisle together, petals falling around us, I deliberately did not look at her again. Today was supposed to be ours. Outside, the afternoon light spilled over the stone steps as guests gathered around, taking pictures and hugging us. Jake's friends slapped him on the back, my bridesmaids squealed, and someone pressed a glass of champagne into my free hand. I smiled, I posed, I laughed on autopilot. Inside, a knot tightened. My father's empty car spot outside the church mocked me every time I glanced at it. Senator William Taylor, champion of families, could not be bothered to show up for his own daughter. The reception was set up in a garden behind the church. Strings of lights, white tables, a dance floor already waiting. It was beautiful. It was everything I had imagined. But as the music started and guests drifted toward the bar, my phone buzzed in my clutch like an alarm. Mom. I stared at the screen for 2 full rings before I answered. What do you want? I asked, skipping the pleasantries. My voice sounded sharper than I expected. I want you to wake up, Martha snapped. You paraded yourself in front of our entire community with that man, and you did not even have the decency to warn us. Do you know what people are saying already? They are saying I looked happy, I hope, I replied. My fingers curled around the edge of the table, knuckles white. They are saying our daughter just blew up her future, she shot back. Do you understand what this does to your father's image? To my work? You could have married a partner, a senator, a judge. Instead, you picked a mechanic who probably cannot even afford your dry cleaning. I felt something in me snap. He can afford honesty, which is more than I can say for you, I said. And maybe I am done being an accessory in your campaign photos. There was a beat of silence. I could almost hear her recalculating. You are emotional. This is not you. When the dust settles, you will see how foolish this is. I am giving you one chance, Sophie. Have the marriage annulled quietly, and we will fix this. We can say it was stress, cold feet, whatever. But if you dig your heels in, you will drag all of us down with you. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. You keep talking like you are afraid I will ruin you, I said softly. But you and Dad already did that yourselves. Sophie, do not start with your conspiracy theories again, she warned. You do not understand how politics works. Those numbers, those transfers, those documents you think you found. You are looking at things you cannot possibly interpret. Except I could. I had. Late at night, months ago, when I had been bored enough to open my father's laptop while he drank in his study, too drunk to notice. An email thread, a spreadsheet, a folder mislabeled as draft speeches that held files with account numbers and offshore entities. I had not understood everything, but I had understood enough. Enough to forward copies to my personal email, enough to put them on a USB drive, enough to realize my parents were not just image-obsessed, they were corrupt. If I am so clueless, why did Dad change all his passwords 2 days after I asked one question about the foundation books? I asked. Why did you tell me to stop poking around and focus on my wedding? Her breath caught, barely audible. If you bring any of that up again, you will regret it, she said, her tone dropping into something cold and dangerous. Do you hear me? You will not just hurt us, you will hurt yourself. I am already hurt, I said. You did that when you chose donors over your own daughter. Sophie, listen to me carefully, she said. You are going to smile, dance, and act like a grateful bride tonight. Tomorrow, you will come home, alone. We will talk about how to fix this. If you do not, your father will have no choice but to protect what we have built. And that will not be pleasant for anyone. My pulse hammered in my ears. She was threatening me at my own wedding. Not with grounding, not with cutting me off, but with something much darker. Enjoy the party, Mom, I said quietly. Because once you see what I am capable of, you might wish the only problem you had was a mechanic son-in-law. Sophie, do not you dare. I hung up before she could finish. My hand shook as I slid the phone back into my clutch, the envelope brushing my fingers again. Insurance, weapon, both. Around me, guests clinked glasses and laughed under the lights. Jake was across the lawn, listening intently to one of his friends, his expression soft. He looked up, caught my eye, and smiled like I was the only person in the world. I forced myself to breathe and walk toward him. This was still our day, but in the back of my mind, another countdown had begun. Tell me, if you knew you were holding something that could destroy your family and save yourself at the same time, would you use it? By the time the sun started to dip, the garden glowed in shades of gold and pink. People were dancing, kids were chasing each other between the tables, and the band slid into a familiar, upbeat song that dragged half the guests to the dance floor. On the surface, it was a perfect wedding reception. Underneath, my nerves were frayed to threads. Hey, a voice said beside me. I turned to see Daniel, my cousin, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider instead of champagne. You look like you are at a board meeting, not your own party. I managed a smile and took one of the glasses. Feels like one, I said. Except the shareholders are my parents and they are planning a hostile takeover. He snorted. That sounds about right for your house. Daniel had grown up orbiting our family but never quite inside it. He knew enough to see the cracks, not enough to be pulled into the inner circle. That made him safe. It also made him one of the only relatives I trusted. She called, did not she? He asked, eyes flicking toward my clutch. More than once, I admitted. She wants me to get it annulled. Tomorrow, if possible. Of course she does, he said. She has been rehearsing your life script since you were 12. First you intern on the Hill, then you marry someone appropriate, then you run for office with a perfect photo family. You just ripped page 3 out of her manual. I took a sip, the bubbles stinging my throat. She is not just angry, I said. She is scared. Of what? A little gossip? Daniel shrugged. They have survived worse. That rumor about your dad and his aide did not even stick. It is not gossip this time, I said quietly. It is evidence. Daniel's playful expression faded. Sophie, he said slowly, what did you do? I opened my eyes, I replied. Months ago, I found some files on Dad's laptop. Transfers, shell companies, money that was supposed to go to the foundation. It did not. It went somewhere else. Somewhere offshore. He stared at me, the music and laughter around us turning into a dull blur. Are you sure? I wish I were not, I said. I copied everything. I checked account names. The same donors who brag about funding scholarships are getting their money back plus favors. It is not just shady, Daniel. It is illegal. And you put it on a drive, he guessed. I nodded slowly. It is in my bag right now. I was going to destroy it at one point. Then Mom started threatening me. Then Dad forgot to invite Jake to a family dinner, and I realized they would never respect my choices unless I had leverage. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. So your leverage is the nuclear option, he muttered. Classic Taylor move, but coming from the one decent person in this family, it is a little terrifying. Terrifying for them, I said. For once. We fell silent for a moment, watching Jake spin my friend around on the dance floor, both of them laughing. He did not know the details. He knew my parents were toxic and controlling, but he did not know I was sitting on a bomb. I had not decided if I wanted him to. Are you going to use it? Daniel asked eventually. I stared at my hands. I do not know, I admitted. Part of me wants to send everything to every journalist and watch their world collapse. Part of me still hears Mom saying family first and wonders if that is exactly what I would be destroying. Family is not a brand, Daniel said. It is people, the ones who choose you. Do you really think they would not ruin you to protect themselves if they had to? I thought about my mother's voice on the phone, the way she had said, "That will not be pleasant for anyone," like a promise. I thought about the time they had threatened to cut off my college fund unless I changed my major to political science. The way my father always introduced me not as my daughter Sophie, but as my daughter who is going to do great things for this country someday. My path was never mine. It was a campaign slogan. They already tried, I said. They used money and guilt and shame. Now they are using threats. I am tired of playing by their rules. Daniel clinked his glass gently against mine. Then write your own, he said. Just be sure you can live with the ending. Can you live with yours? I asked. You walked away from the family business. You took the quiet exit. Was it worth it? He smiled, but there was a shadow in it. Every day, he said. But I still wake up sometimes wondering what would have happened if I had blown the whistle instead of just resigning. Maybe your choice is not between hurting them and staying quiet. Maybe it is between finally telling the truth or letting the lie keep running your life. His words lodged in my chest like a stone. Before I could answer, Jake walked over, flushed from dancing, grinning like an idiot. What are you two plotting over here? He asked. You look like you are planning a coup. In this family, a coup would be an improvement, Daniel joked. Jake slipped an arm around my waist. Hey, he said softly, eyes searching my face. You okay? You have been in your head all night. I forced a smile. Just thinking about how weird it is that my dad is shaking hands in some fundraiser hall while we are cutting cake, I said. That is his loss, Jake replied without missing a beat. He can keep his donors. I have you. For a moment the knot in my chest loosened. He meant it. He did not care about titles or headlines. He just cared about us. But as I leaned into him, my phone buzzed again. This time it was not my mother. It was my sister, Emily. I showed Daniel the screen. He raised his brows. You should take that, he said quietly. She is still on the fence between their world and yours. He walked away, giving us space. I answered the call. Em? Sophie? Emily whispered, her voice tight. What did you do? Cold slid down my spine. What are you talking about? Mom is pacing the living room like a caged animal, she said. She is on the phone with Dad and his lawyer. She keeps saying if she leaks anything, we are finished. What is she talking about? What are you planning? I closed my eyes. There it was. The line they were afraid I would cross. I am planning to live my life without being blackmailed by our own parents, I said. That is all. Sophie, please, Emily begged. Whatever you found, whatever you think you know, do not do anything crazy. They are terrified. I have never seen Mom like this. She keeps saying your wedding is an embarrassment, that you are going to drag the whole family down. She wants Dad to handle it. Handle it how? I asked, my heartbeat roaring. I do not know, Emily said. But when Dad says he will handle something, people get fired or disappear from campaign photos. I do not want that to be you. I looked across the lawn at Jake, at the people who were here for us, not for my father's career. My clutch felt heavy at my side. Then maybe it is time they finally feel what it is like to lose something they cannot control, I said. Sophie, if you had parents like mine, I asked quietly, and you had one chance to stop them from hurting anyone else, would you take it? The first dance came and went, a blur of soft lights and Jake's hands steady on my waist. People cried, laughed, toasted. Somewhere between the cake cutting and the bouquet toss, I realized I was done waiting for my parents to decide my fate. If there was one thing they respected, it was power. And tonight, for once, I had more of it than they did. I slipped away from the dance floor and headed toward the side entrance of the garden where the staff came and went. The air was cooler there, the music muffled. I pulled the envelope from my clutch and turned it over in my hands. It was small, almost flimsy, but it felt heavier than any speech my father had ever given. Inside was the USB drive and a single printed note. No threats, no explanations. Just one sentence. If anything happens to me or to Jake, this goes to the press. Beneath it, 3 email addresses for journalists who had spent years trying to crack the spotless Taylor image. I had set up the rest earlier that week. A scheduled email, a cloud folder, a dead man switch I never thought I would really use. Tonight, I updated the timing on my phone, just in case. If I did not disable it by midnight, the links would go out automatically. It was a safety net and a loaded gun at the same time. You look like you are about to talk yourself out of something, Daniel said, appearing at my elbow. I jumped. Do you ever mind your own business? I muttered, slipping the envelope halfway back into my clutch. Not when my cousin is about to start a personal war with a sitting senator, he said dryly. If you are going to do this, do it with your eyes open. I have never seen things more clearly in my life, I said. They think they can bully me forever. They think they can threaten Jake, my job, my future. They forget I know exactly where their bodies are buried. If I do nothing, I am complicit. If I act, at least I am honest. Daniel studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then make sure they understand you are serious, he said. Do not bluff with people who assume you are too soft to follow through. Before I could answer, a hush fell over the nearby tables. I heard the shift in the crowd before I saw her. Martha had arrived at the reception. She walked in like she owned the place, flanked by two of my father's longtime donors and a woman from his campaign staff. Every instinct in me screamed that this was not a social visit. Guests parted around her, unsure whether to greet her or pretend they did not see. She barely looked at anyone. Her eyes were locked on me. "Round two," Daniel murmured. "Want backup?" "I have it," I said, glancing toward the dance floor where Jake had already noticed her and was heading our way. "Stay close anyway." Martha reached me faster than I expected. Up close, she looked flawless as always, but there was a tightness around her mouth I had never seen before. Fear, anger, desperation. Maybe all three. "Congratulations," she said, the word brittle. "I see you went through with it." "Nice of you to join us," I replied. "Too bad Dad could not find the time between fundraisers." Her jaw clenched. "Your father is doing important work," she said. "Unlike you, trying to burn everything down because you want to play rebel bride." Jake stepped up beside me, placing a hand on the small of my back. "Martha," he said evenly, "this is our wedding. If you came here to insult Sophie, you can leave." She shot him a look like he was a stain she could not scrub out. "Do not talk to me about respect when you have dragged my daughter into your small, mediocre life," she said. "You have no idea what she is throwing away for you." "I am throwing away a cage," I said. "I am not sure that counts as a loss." Guests were watching now, pretending not to. The band had quietly shifted to something softer, giving our confrontation an unwanted soundtrack. Martha took a step closer, lowering her voice so only the three of us could hear. "Enough theatrics," she said. "We both know you are not going to do anything. You are emotional, not stupid. You will not risk prison, lawsuits, or public humiliation just to spite us." "Funny," I said. "I was thinking the same thing about you and Dad." Her eyes narrowed. "You have nothing," she said. "You saw a few out-of-context files and decided you are some kind of hero. Do you know how ridiculous that is?" I pulled the envelope from my clutch and held it up between us. Her gaze snapped to it like metal to a magnet. "You are wrong," I said calmly. "I have enough to end both of your careers. Enough to make every gala committee in this town erase your names from their programs. Enough to make the word Taylor trend for all the wrong reasons." Color drained from her face for the briefest moment before she masked it. "You would not dare," she whispered. "Try me," I said. Jake looked between us, realization dawning slowly. "Sophie, what is that?" he asked. "It is the reason they are so sure I will crawl back," I said without taking my eyes off my mother. "And the reason I will not." I pressed the envelope into Martha's hand. She did not reach for it at first, so I took her fingers and closed them around it myself. Her skin felt cold. "In there is a drive," I said. "On it are copies of everything you are afraid I saw, along with a note. I have already backed it all up and scheduled it. If you try to destroy that, or pretend this conversation never happened, it will not matter. But if you stop threatening me, if you leave Jake and me alone, if you accept that I am not your project anymore, then maybe it never has to see daylight." She stared at me like she did not recognize the person standing in front of her. "You are blackmailing your own parents on your wedding day," she said slowly, as if tasting the words. "I am giving you a choice," I corrected. "For once." Her fingers tightened around the envelope so hard the paper crinkled. "You have no idea what you are playing with," she hissed. "Do you think the people behind your father will let you do this? Do you think they will simply watch you hold a gun to his head?" I swallowed, forcing myself not to flinch. "Then maybe they should have picked better allies," I said. "I am done being collateral damage." Jake's hand slid into mine, anchoring me. "Whatever this is," he said quietly, "we face it together." Martha looked between us, her expression twisting. "You will regret this," she said finally. When this blows back on you, do not expect us to save you. I am not asking you to save me, I replied. I am asking you to stop trying to destroy me. She turned on her heel and walked away, the envelope clutched like a live grenade. Her donor friends hurried after her, whispering. For the rest of the evening, I went through the motions. Speeches, dances, photos. I laughed when people expected me to laugh, smiled when cameras pointed my way, but a part of me was listening for something else. My phone stayed silent for almost an hour. I started to think maybe she had called my bluff. Maybe she would toss the envelope in the nearest trash can and dare me to do my worst. Then, just as Jake and I were about to slip away for a few quiet minutes alone, my phone lit up. Dad. Then Mom. Then Dad again. 3 missed calls in under 2 minutes, followed by a text from Emily. What did you give them? They are freaking out. I looked at the screen, at the cascade of incoming calls, at the tiny clock ticking closer to midnight. When they finally saw what I had handed them, they did exactly what I knew they would do. They started calling me in a panic. I did not answer their calls. Not at first. I watched my phone light up on the table next to the guest book, vibrating against the white linen like a trapped insect. Dad, Mom, Dad again. A string of missed calls and one wordless voicemail that was just the sound of my father breathing hard through his nose, like he had just finished yelling at someone else. Jake and I slipped into a small side room the venue had set aside for us, a quiet space with a couch, a mirror, and a vase of flowers that suddenly felt wildly out of place. The music from the reception was muffled through the walls. It should have been the most peaceful moment of the night, just the two of us catching our breath. Instead, I was staring at my phone like it was a live bomb. Talk to me, Jake said gently, closing the door. Whatever is happening with them, I want to know. I had spent years trying to protect him from the worst parts of my family, the arrogance, the manipulation, the way every kindness came with strings attached. Tonight, hiding it felt pointless, maybe even dangerous. I took a deep breath. Remember how I told you the foundation my parents run is not as noble as it looks? I asked. He nodded slowly. You said there were shady donations, money disappearing. It is worse than shady, I said. It is criminal. Kickbacks, shell companies, tax evasion. I found proof months ago. I copied it. I kept it. His brows knit. And that envelope you gave your mom? Contains enough evidence to ruin them, I said, and a note explaining that if anything happens to me or to you, everything goes to the press automatically. I set up a timed release. I can stop it, or I can let it run. Jake stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Then, slowly, realization softened into something else. Respect. Fear. Maybe both. So when you say terrifying, he said quietly, you are not talking about a bad headline. You are talking about the end of their careers. And maybe a prison sentence, I added. For people who think they are untouchable, there is nothing scarier. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. Finally, my father snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut through the static. What the hell do you think you are doing? Enjoying my wedding night, I said. Or trying to. This is not a joke, Sophie, he said. Your mother tells me you handed her some kind of drive. You will tell me right now that this is a misunderstanding. It is not, I replied. I know about the foundation, the offshore accounts, the donors, all of it. Silence. Not the shocked kind, the calculating kind. I could almost hear him sorting through strategies in his head. Denial, minimization, intimidation. He had used all of them on reporters, on opponents, on colleagues. He had never needed to use them on his own daughter. You do not know what you are talking about, he said finally. Those documents are taken out of context. You think you are some kind of whistleblower? You are a girl who got into files she should not have seen. I am a woman who knows how to forward emails and save attachments, I said. I am not stupid, Dad. I traced the accounts. I checked the names. You did not even bother to hide some of them very well. His voice dropped. Do you have any idea what happens if this gets out? Yes, I said quietly. You lose your seat. Mom loses her influence. The foundation gets investigated. Some people go down with you. Maybe you go down alone. Either way, the image of Senator Taylor, champion of the people, dies. And you think you walk away clean? He asked, incredulous. Do you think anyone will believe you did not benefit from this? That you did not know for years? They will drag your name through the mud too. Your husband, your future children. You are not holding a weapon, Sophie. You are holding a grenade with your name carved into it. My throat tightened, but I did not let the fear in his words take root. I already live in your fallout, I said. I have been doing that my whole life. The difference now is that I am not willing to keep your secrets for free. Jake stepped closer, lacing his fingers with mine. I put the call on speaker. If my father was going to threaten me, Jake deserved to hear it. What do you want? My father asked, each word clipped. It was not a question of curiosity. It was a negotiation. I want you to leave us alone, I said. No more threats. No more attempts to control where I live, who I marry, or where I work. No more using money as a leash. You think that is enough? He scoffed. You think you can blackmail a sitting senator into giving you a quiet life? I think you are more afraid of losing everything than I am, I said. I have scheduled everything. The files, the summaries, the accounts. If I do not deactivate it by midnight, the first wave goes out to 3 journalists and 1 investigator who has been trying to audit your foundation for years. I cannot pull it back after that. You will deactivate it, he said. You will hand over every copy, every password, every file. You will apologize to your mother, annul this farce, and we will pretend this never happened. That is the only way this ends without destroying you. Without destroying me, I repeated. Listen to yourself. You are not worried about me. You are worried about your donors, your polling numbers. You are my daughter, he snapped. You belong to this family. I belonged to this family the day you decided not to show up for my wedding, I said. Not because of some emergency, but because my husband does not look good in a campaign ad. He fell silent. Jake squeezed my hand. I could feel his anger vibrating through his skin. Senator, he said finally, his voice low but steady, with all due respect, you lost the right to talk about what Sophie belongs to when you chose your image over her happiness. You stay out of this, my father snarled. No, Jake said. I married her. I am in this whether you like it or not. For a moment, all I could hear was my father breathing. Then his tone shifted, colder, more dangerous. The people who support me, the ones who keep this machine running, do not take kindly to threats, he said. You are poking at something much bigger than yourself, Sophie, bigger than this marriage. There are consequences you cannot even imagine. Like what? I asked. Smear campaigns? Fake charges? Convenient leaks about my personal life? You have been doing that to other people for years. Maybe it is time you felt what it is like to be on the receiving end. You would tear down your own father? He demanded. You are the one who built himself on stolen money, I replied. I am just refusing to hold the scaffolding up anymore. My phone buzzed with another incoming call. Emily, I ignored it. You have until 11:59, I said. After that, I cannot stop what happens. If you want to talk terms, I will listen. But I am done being bullied. You do not get to threaten my husband. You do not get to decide whether my life is an embarrassment because it does not serve your narrative. You are making a mistake. he said quietly. And when it all comes crashing down, you will come crawling back. And I will not be there to catch you. I stopped expecting you to catch me a long time ago, I said. Good night, Dad. I hung up before he could answer. My hand shook, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from relief, from the terrifying, exhilarating realization that I had finally said the words I had been swallowing for years. Jake exhaled, long and slow. You really did it, he said. You put their whole empire on a timer. Do you think I went too far? I asked, my voice suddenly small. He tilted my chin up so I had to look at him. I think you did what you had to do to get free, he said. They cornered you. You drew a line. The only terrifying thing to me is how long they expected you to stay quiet. The clock on my phone read 10:07 p.m. Almost 2 hours until midnight. 2 hours for my parents to decide whether they cared more about their power or about the daughter they had tried so hard to mold. 2 hours to find out just how far they were willing to go. The email did not go out at midnight. At 11:46 p.m., while Jake and I were saying goodbye to the last of our guests, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number linked to my father's secure line. It was a single sentence. We will step down from the foundation and announce I am not running for re-election. Attached was a photo of a hastily drafted statement on my father's letterhead. The words were cold, calculated, but unmistakable. Health reasons, the statement said. Time with family. All the usual phrases. Nothing about fraud or offshore accounts. But I knew what it really meant. He was retreating. Not because he suddenly found a conscience, but because he had finally met something he could not bully or charm into submission. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the timer app linked to my dead man's switch. This was it. The moment. Do you believe him? Jake asked quietly. I believe he is scared, I said. Scared enough to give up the thing he loves most. That is a start. Is it enough for you to call this off? He asked. In the end, revenge rarely looks like fireworks. It looks like slow collapse, a career fading from headlines, invitations drying up, whispered conversations turning to sharp, suspicious silence. I will pause the full leak, I said. For now. But I am not deleting anything. If they backtrack, we finish it. I walked into the quiet of the bridal suite, opened my phone, and disabled the scheduled send with a few taps. The links stayed where they were. The files remained in the cloud, on the drive, in the envelope my mother still clutched somewhere like a piece of plutonium. The gun was no longer pointed at their heads, but it was still on the table. By morning, the world had changed. My father's announcement hit the political news cycle before breakfast. Commentators speculated about health issues, party strategy, family dynamics. Some suggested scandal without proof. A few reporters, the ones who had been chasing our family for years, sounded almost too satisfied when they read the statement on air. They knew there was more to the story. They just did not know what. My mother disappeared from social media. Invitations to panels and charity events postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. Donors who used to brag about their close relationship with the Taylors suddenly stopped mentioning us at all. The machine my parents had spent decades building did not explode. It simply began to rust in public. At home, things were quieter and louder at the same time. Emily called 3 days after the wedding. They know they lost, she said without preamble. Dad threw a glass at the wall when the statement went live. Mom has that envelope locked in the safe. They are furious, terrified, but they are not calling you. They do not need to, I said. We said everything we needed to say. Maybe you did, Emily replied softly. I did not. We met at a coffee shop halfway between my tiny apartment and my parents' sprawling house. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of carrying our family's secrets had finally settled into her shoulders. I wanted you to know, she said, fingers wrapped tight around her mug. I am looking for a new job. away from Mom, away from the foundation. I cannot keep pretending this is fine. You do not owe me that, I said, surprised. I owe you the truth, she said. You were right. I saw things. I heard things. I told myself it was not my place, that it was just how politics worked. Watching them panic after your wedding, I realized that they never would have stopped on their own. You forcing them to step back might be the only decent thing anyone has done in this family for years. Her eyes filled with tears. I am sorry I did not stand up for you sooner, she whispered. I reached across the table and took her hand. We are all just trying to survive them, I said. You are allowed to be late to the rebellion. Over the next few weeks, the distance between my parents and me calcified into something solid. They did not congratulate us on the wedding. They did not send a gift. When we sent them a photo of Jake and me in front of the courthouse where we had signed our papers, there was no reply. But there were no more threats either. No more calls about fixing this. No more warnings about what their donors might do. They understood the bargain. They would live with the quiet dread of knowing their sins could still be dragged into the light. I would live with the knowledge that I had chosen not to destroy them completely. Not yet. Sometimes, late at night, I would lie awake next to Jake and wonder if I had done enough. If letting them retreat was mercy or weakness. If exposing everything, watching them dragged in handcuffs past cameras, would have been more satisfying. Jake would roll over, hook an arm around my waist, and mumble into my hair, "You are doing the best you can with the worst hand imaginable. That is enough." My revenge did not give me a perfect family. It did not rewrite my childhood or erase years of control and manipulation. What it did was simple and enormous at the same time. It took away their ability to decide my life for me. They used to call my wedding an embarrassment. To them, it was. It was the day their daughter refused to play the role they had written. The day the image cracked. The day they realized the quiet, obedient girl they thought they owned was holding something far more terrifying than a bad headline. The truth. And now, when people ask me about that day, I do not start with the cake, or the dress, or the flowers. I start with the empty front pew, with the envelope, with the phone calls that turned my parents' voices from contempt to panic. Because here is the question I still ask myself, and now I am asking you. If you were standing where I was, holding proof that your perfect family was built on lies, would you have let it burn? Or would you, like me, choose a slower kind of revenge, one that lets you walk away with your head high while they finally learn how it feels to be afraid of the truth?